Welcome back, everybody, to the Investors Roundtable. I'm your host, Robert Kraft. You can follow me on Twitter at Bobby K. Kraft, BOBBYKKRAFT. And we have a great topic, an even better panel today. What's going on, everybody? We got Kevin Shea at The Good Prick. We're not at 500 followers yet. I don't know what you guys are doing out there, but Kevin, welcome back. What's going on, man?
I was on mute, so yeah, It's always nice to be back, Bobby. Thanks for inviting me again.
Of course, always great.
How many of these panels have you done, Kevin?
How many what?
How many of these have you done now?
I'm going to guess 6 or 7.
Nice.
At least. I don't know. I think it's tied between him and Stephen Keel for the most done thus far.
Keel's in far more often than I am.
I like the competition. I want it to be competitive because then it saves me the trouble of having to ask a couple favors here and there. But I do appreciate every time everyone does join on. And speaking of which, I gotta introduce Sam. It's been a while since he's been on. He's trying to get to the record now at this point. Sam Namiri.
I think I was on
Ridgewood.
the first one, right? And then I haven't been on since. But I must say, Kevin, you've been very entertaining to listen to, and Bobby, as always, great job moderating. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having me back on.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. And also, Kevin, we got to congratulate Sam right now. He kicked ass this last quarter, according to his last letters. So we got to give him some props there.
Thank you.
Very good. Nice. So give us a little background. Why did we do so well last quarter?
My investments went up. No, I mean, you never know with investing in stocks, like timing of things. And so my biggest position last quarter went up quite a bit. And it's obviously in like the work from home economy, it helps. I don't really talk about position names too much. So, but yeah, I mean, that if you want to know more, reach out directly. I'm happy to chat one-on-one with people about specifics. So.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So now let's get to today's topic. And, this is something that we've talked about on a few panels now, but we wanted to kind of take it a step further. And I would like to thank our fellow panelist, Kevin Shea, with taking this topic a step further. So the question that he asked that we're going to discuss today is, can cultural moats exist in the age of physical separation? Sam, speaking of working from home and, everybody working remotely. So that's the question that we're posing today. So Kevin, you want to start us off on this conversation and maybe even give a little background and then we'll get into it?
Sure. This is a topic that has evolved over the 17 sessions that you've had, Bobby. I forget which one.
Our 17 therapeutic sessions.
Yeah, it's very, very nice. I mean, it's better than drugs.
This is, I call this IA, Investors Anonymous, but not so anonymous. But anyways,
so the topic has been on the table for quite some time, and various comments have been made. Obviously, the whole idea of moats was originally brought on by Buffett and has been discussed numerous times in many, many different formats over the course of the last literally 10, 15 years of whenever Buffett made the comment. I think that there's quite a bit of interest around that, and how do you protect your company's assets, broadly, by separating them from competition. I'll take a step further, sit down and say, the moat, of course, is the thing on a castle, and in my view of it is that moats work up to a point in time. And as I was talking to my wife last night about this topic, I said, what happens to a moat when you have a cannon on the other side of the moat? So the castle becomes, it basically collapses under the siege of a cannon. So to some extent, castles and moats are indefensible. They, over time and innovation, will kill all moats. And so that's a premise that I've been working on for quite some time, is that moats are in fact indefensible over time and up to innovation. And again, one can argue about patents and things of that type and better management. And I would agree. I'm not defining the timing. I'm just defining the fact that moats are over time indefensible.
But could I give you an example of one that maybe is defensible and tell me how you would argue that?
Sure.
So like WD-40, for instance, right? WD-40 is like the most well-known lubricant, right? I'm sure there's other companies that can create something similar to it, but why risk, spending a little bit less as a consumer or as a, someone who uses WD-40, right? And take the risk of that. If something doesn't work out, you're like, man, why'd you cheap out on like $1 a can, for instance, on something less?
If I continue to stretch this thing, what I would have come into is that I think in the marketplaces that I play in, you play in, others play in, is we're looking at micro caps, typically micro caps, small caps, mid caps. I do think that there are historical moats, okay? Whether or not it's brand or whether or not they've just been in the business for so damn long.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at the automobile companies. I mean, as I said, I'm pretty familiar with Ford Motor Company, and do they have a moat? Not in product. Do they have a moat in people? They're all using the same people. Do they have a moat in culture? It's a vast organism that basically kind of works its way through. So to be honest with you, if I look at these large, well-developed companies with well-developed products and brands, I can't get to the bottom of it to sit down and say, well, that moat exists around those historic companies based upon fill in the blank, product, people, management, et cetera. So how do you differentiate these very well-known large companies that exist and have existed for quite some time? Do they have a moat? I mean, and if so, what is it? And how does one go about trying to underline the foundation of that moat? Again, I'm looking at, will Tesla take down Ford? I don't think so, because Ford will ultimately come up with they already have come up with electric vehicles, and they'll start to compete. But again, it's a fascinating question. WD-40 has been around forever and ever and ever. They're a very well used brand. Everybody uses them. In fact, the funny thing is I use them to clean my bumpers. Seriously, clean my bumpers and clean my alloy wheels. Does a spectacular job. Okay,
Interesting.
it's a funny question.
So full disclosure, I don't own WD-40, but just
nor do I.
Neither do I.
And then also, like, going back to the auto industry, like, I just don't think the automobile business is a good business. Like, I wouldn't consider, it's not a quality business, I think, in my opinion, to invest in, because just the characteristics of the industry, I don't think it can create a moat in a certain way. It's very competitive. Consumers, like, it's a big purchase for a consumer, so they generally do a lot of research and shopping around for that purchase. And I don't think there's like too much brand loyalty to some degree there. That's just
but okay. So going back to your question of just using WD-40 as our case study here, because I can think of actually quite a few microcap, or actually one microcap in particular that I should I name the name? But it's a name that I think you two are both familiar with, that you can maybe use as a similar example, and yet it's still a microcap, and it's kind of in like a turnaround situation, but it's a product that we all know by name and would think of that product just by that name. Yes, there you go. And so, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, and full disclosure, I'm not a shareholder. If anybody is,
neither am I.
Figured it out too. So I have to ask that question. I mean, it's not like WD-40 has a patent, or this other company, I believe, has a patent on their sprays or lubricants. So what's stopping some of these generics, a Kirkland, where's Costco's WD-40 product coming out that's going to be right next to WD-40 for $1 less, and people are like, all right, well, it does the same job, like I'll just grab that. We just know, like, I need to go get WD-40, but still might go with the generic brand because there's not a huge barrier to entry. We just think there might be.
Let me just talk to that subject briefly, but on an aside. As I mentioned on moats, in my opinion, as I've said, I think that innovation and timing is two things that destroy moats. And I think two of the other things that destroy moats are stupidity and arrogance, of management. All right. So, I mean, let's look at another one that's perfectly good candidate. And I forget how it worked out, but both Kodak and Polaroid, what did they miss? Polaroid owned the instant photography. Okay. They didn't even show up during the digital photography. They had some sort of claim on it. I forget who had claim on it, whether it was Kodak a Polaroid. I think they actually had some patents, but I'm not sure. But then again, look at the stupidity and arrogance of those two companies saying, well, we're in the film business. Okay, no, you're in the photograph business. So I think that there are self-defeating moats that exist by bad management at the same time. So I mean, if we're looking at good moats, we have to look at bad moats, or whatever, however you want to describe them, or self-defeating moats. So again, I'm not quite sure whether or not the company that you're talking about, Bobby, they are a turnaround, and they certainly seem to have had a brand loyalty of some sort, but the management screwed it all up. Okay, now maybe they did it because of the need for the technology didn't exist over the last 5 or 10 years, and now it does badly. Okay, so again, one has to look at that thing and sit down and say, but they do have a brand. Okay, and that brand might be able to give them leverage. But if we're talking about that, and as I said, the topic is culture, and I don't know what kind of culture exists in WD-40. Again, is it historical culture? Does it really matter to them? I mean, is it really just their brand and that's it? I mean, do they care about culture? I mean, if I look at something like Facebook or Twitter or Google, I mean, that's heavily suspended on culture. Again, it's a monolithic culture, but I think it's pretty much there. I mean, it's a singular focus that these companies have. When I look back and look at, for example, I look at Ford. Ford has a culture, but it is extraordinarily universal. I mean, not monolithic. How do they compete? Do they compete? And culturally to things like a Google or a Facebook, who have 10% of the employees that a large company like Ford has. I mean, similarly, again, I'm not quite sure how Sears failed, but Sears failed, and they certainly had a brand for quite some time. And it showed, obviously, that brand moat was unsuccessful, but it might have been unsuccessfully leveraged by management. So again, I don't even know why Sears failed. I don't know. I haven't followed the story.
Have you been to a Sears recently?
Hell no.
Or like the last 2 years, 3, like you've been driven
What's a
by
Sears?
Just look at the buildings. That'll tell you exactly
Sam,
why.
All the Sears in LA, I believe the one by my place or in the valley, gone.
Yeah. No, but like if you look at the buildings, they just never invested in anything really. They were just trying to milk it for as much as they possibly could. And I think they had debt issues there too. But if you ever see a Sears building, it's like from the 70s or 80s and it hasn't been touched.
Oh yeah. They look beautiful. They turn into great apartments. They really do. No, the Sears building in Boston is called the Landmark Building. It is gorgeous. It's like an Art Deco building. Okay, it's a beautiful, beautiful building, and it's all apartments. And it turned the entire area around where it is into a very, very gentrified area. Why did Sears fail? I mean, did they have a moat? What was it? And was it stupidity of thinking that they were in the real estate business?
Well, Kevin, I think we answered the first part of this question. Just do cultural moats exist? Because I think at the end of the day, we've given a couple examples here of products that, Polaroid, WD-40, where WD-40 obviously not as, still around and still doing well, but you look at a Polaroid or, not as much, right? Unless you want to get into cryptocurrency, right? But at the end of the day, we can kind of show a few examples that name brand products that become like a Kleenex or something like that. There must be some type of cultural moat there that shows that it's existing beyond just the fact that the brand is now the product and it's, inseparable. So now the question being is, well, sorry, do you want to refute?
No, I was just going to say that one of the reasons why you can speak about cultural moats and culture in general is because when you read a lot of sustainability reports, much of the sustainability report that has to do with society aspects of things has to do with the way in which large corporations mostly deal with their employees from a standpoint of work-life environments and things of that type, creating a culture. So you will see that they are indeed focusing on creating the culture that's right for that business. So,
right.
the large companies have already in the sustainability reports have already defined culture. And most of these sustainability reports were done before COVID. So to some extent, now one has to ask are these comments that are made large corporations about culture and society and things of that type, can they be workable within an environment in which nobody's in the building? So I have an old school perspective. I'm sit down and say, I think cultures do develop, people to people, in the coffee room, bullshitting is appropriate, et cetera. Again, as I'm saying, that may not be the way in which cultures are developed currently. Maybe there is a culture that's based upon Zoom meetings, for example, and that might be sufficient enough. My question is it, or will it be? Again, and I've read a number of different things about some companies have seen what they perceive as being productivity improvements, okay, when people aren't actually working in a building. So there's a lot of conflicting information, data that's coming out, and a lot of companies are trying to make decisions on whether or not the way in which people collaborate, whether or not in person or over a device like this, is effective. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, as I said, it might very well be I might be looking at an old school perspective, and maybe the new school is that cultures are indeed changing, okay, in a fashion where, they rely upon, as I said, the Zoom device or some sort of remote connectivity. That's where I'm coming from. Is
the question not whether or not can culture moats exist? It's like, well, how do you define what your corporate culture is in the age of physical separation? Because we're still in such early innings to then, once you define that, then understanding, well, can it work? Right.
Right. You're right. Again, you're right on the money. Do they exist? How do they exist? Will they exist? Are they that valuable?
They're existing now, but we don't know if they'll work. Right?
Working cultures have already existed forever. Let's face it. And then they obviously have changed. And as I mentioned, I think some cultures are reflective more as I said, these large companies, to me, they operate as an organism. They just exist. Okay. And the culture there's a culture of existence, not necessarily maybe a culture of innovation, okay, where you compete because your culture is indeed totally focused around the vision of a wonderful, highly well-spoken CEO or whatnot. Okay. So again, that's where I'm positioning the question is that, again, I think your guests have indeed demonstrated through conversation that these cultures are important, okay? And I do recall, I think it was Stephen who said that they are competitive, okay? And so the question is that what does it mean? If it's if a technology moat is indefensible, is a cultural moat defensible or is it indefensible? And if so, does a cultural moat is it not mitigated, but is a cultural moat, is it impacted by the changes that are likely to occur over the next few years?
Right. So I'll tell you what I look for when I do due diligence on a company and when I visit companies, and now it's remotely. One of the big questions I ask management is what do you measure, right? Like what's some of the data points you look at? What are you telling your employees is important? How are you measuring your employees' success? And so I read a book a few years ago by John Dewar called Measure What Matters. He kind of took it from the Google playbook, right? In terms of, if you measure it, people will care about it. And I think CrossFit, is kind of based off the same thing, right? It's like, you got to be able to measure exactly what you're doing to see your performance and see how you improve over time. So I think that's really where the cultural moat, I think the best cultural moats will exist in this whole work from home environment is by figuring out what matters, how to measure it, and does that actually drive business performance going forward? And I think that's why Google, has always done a great job in almost everything they do, right?
It's so funny you say that. I was hanging out with my friend last night who worked at two different companies where The first one wasn't as quality of a product, but the culture there was amazing, and he'll be the first to admit it. Granted, he was there pre-COVID, but one of the reasons he loved it is that there was a lot of goal setting, and you were able to kind of track your performance and see what you needed to get to that goal. And then at the new company that has a very quality product, great, more or less, has a real opportunity, much bigger company, a lot more financial backing, doesn't have that kind of culture, and he's bored to tears, and so he just wishes that he wanted to bring that aspect that he learned at that other company to this, because he thinks that it'll just spark a lot more productivity and just passion for the business, so it's pretty interesting to see that, that's something that you can implement, whether it's in person or not in person. It's just having some sort of performance metrics. If you don't have some sort of goal setting, you want to have a management in there that's really making sure that's put in place.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter in person or not.
I 100% agree with that. And that, what Sam is mentioning, Sam, that comes out of OKRs. Is that,
Yep.
Yeah. And it came out of Thiel. Is that Thiel who introduced that at Google? I think it came out of Intel or whatever it is. But yes, I think that what comes down to is that these things are talking about OKRs, or it used to be called management by objectives. It's the same thing over and over and over again, but again, it's just a new name. But again, it's setting expectations. I'll go back to look. I think Bill Belichick is probably one of the finest coaches ever, and he is absolutely, totally setting a culture based upon performance. Okay, people come in, they don't know what to do, they get booted. They come in, they perform, they get raised to the glory. Okay, so again, is that he develops a system firstly, and then he puts players in who execute against the system, and the system builds the culture and also builds success. Okay, so again, Sam mentioned about how you can have objectives and results, and you can see it in sports, you can see it in any sort of successful endeavor. But I think that what the question that I have out of Sam's is one of the things about OKRs and measurements, metrics and the like, is they typically measure how you performed against your tasks. Okay, they're oftentimes task-based. I haven't seen, and maybe Sam has seen more of it than I, but I haven't seen OKRs used effectively in trying to develop a culture, sit down and say, yeah, you did that, or so let's make it, take an example. It's pretty simple. A lot of these companies build a little bit of culture by having teams go out and work for, they work for a day at Houses for Humanity, okay, Habitat. So have you participated in a Habitat activity? Yes, okay, many people do. That brings in some element of culture because it introduces you and the company into your community, okay? I don't know how many companies do that. I know a lot of large companies do, but I'm not quite sure. I have to ask Sam whether or not in his due diligence and seeing OKRs being used, has he seen any particular company get it into a format in which they kind of use it to seek to develop the culture that they wish.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, a lot of companies just don't measure a lot of things.
Yeah.
So when I go visit companies, a lot of them will be like, oh, we don't really look at that, or we don't like a big thing that a lot of microcap companies do is they look at revenue, and that's usually the thing that they measure, right? But who cares what revenue is if you're not making money on that sale, right? So a lot of companies will switch, like a bad management team will say focus on revenues, and then a good management team will come over and be like, well, they signed all these bad contracts just to grow revenues. Let's look at gross profit, per deal or something of that sort. And so I think it's not even that complicated of stuff. It's more just like logical. And then like in terms of like, I think what you're talking about is more like social culture and things of that sort within a company. That stuff is, I haven't really seen good measurements of that. I think more of it is, that's more like you go in and you see the passion of employees. Are they at the company because they're there for a paycheck, or are they there because there's a bigger mission in mind? And I think that's what Elon Musk has done with Tesla, which my fund that I manage is not a shareholder of, but I believe at Ridgewood we do own shares of Tesla. he has this bigger vision, right, of like electrifying all vehicles. And he's like, I don't care if other people are going to come and compete with us. That's my goal, is to have all these other car automakers come and create electric vehicles. Well, if that happens, our vision has been, come to fruition. And so I think that's why you go work at Tesla, and why you won't go work at Ford if you're the leader in battery technology, right? Is because Tesla is the leader and he has this vision, and Ford is like an old automaker that wants to hang on to their old ways, but is doing this more out of being scared, for instance. And I think that's like, again, it's hard to measure that. You can't really measure that, but you can feel it. You can sense it in the passion of the CEO itself, right? And even though I'm sure Ford CEO is a great talker and great motivator, they don't actually have that passion there, right? And so I forget who it was specifically, but I spoke with someone, or I went to a speech by somebody who talked about the different stakeholders in any business or investment, and one of them obviously is employees. And so he kind of gave a analogy to, if you have a pet, you come home from work, for instance, and your dog is at home, and for the first 5 minutes he's so excited and happy to see you, right? And for that 5 minutes of unconditional love that dog shows you, you're going to do everything for you. You feed that dog, you shelter that dog, you take care of that dog, you do whatever it takes, you cry when that dog passes away, right? And it's just really for that 5 minutes of love that you give them. And so a lot of times, like, that's why these big companies with their CEOs are so effective, is because when they step into the room and with their employees, like they show that love, right, to their employees, and they make them feel good for that. It doesn't need to be for a very long time, but that's something where people, I think it makes them feel good inside, which makes them in return, right, work their whole lives for one company. And
that brings to the point, and I think that you hit it on the head, is that when you have face-to-face meetings like that, the passion it comes through immediately. You know it, you feel it, you see it, it's in the air, it's everywhere. And I think passion actually is highly connected to culture, okay? Because you can create a passionate culture. Again, going back to the sports analogy, the same damn thing. We're going to win, okay? And we know we can win, okay? But now the question you have is that can that means of getting Elon Musk in front of a team of people, okay? Can that continue? Can the passion continue? Can the passion and culture connection continue when he's doing it, by phone or by Zoom telephonics or anything? Again, how do you? I mean, I don't know how I don't know how you equate the two, and I think it comes fundamentally to the question. Okay, can that type of passion, can that type of culture development among the team members be effectively the same, okay, when you're doing it this way? Okay, and I mean this way, I mean, Zoom and not like as soon as I hang up the phone, Sam, you're gone, man. You're not hanging out in the, no beer to be had with you. You're elsewhere. Hey, Sam, let's have a beer. Oh, fly to California. Oh, up yours. So again, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. Is that certainly I think culture is developed strongly by highly visionary and highly effective speakers of large and small companies. But then what happens later? What happens now? Okay, that's where I'm at. And is it going to be sustainable?
Well, that's why I think
long-lived.
That's why I think OKRs matter, right? Is because the passion is not just in the speech; it's in the, like, Elon Musk. I'm sure he breaks it down to the details, and he pushes people, right, to get the job done,
right,
to push forward as quickly as possible. And I think that's where his passion is, and that gets reflective. And then I think with engineering, I think it's a little bit of different as well too. I think that lets you work remotely a little bit better. But I don't know if you remember, like, right when the lockdowns were happening, Elon Musk wasn't shutting down. Like, he was like fighting the county of Alameda to be like, "What are you doing? You can't shut me down. I need to be open. I'm essential."
right.
So there obviously is aspects of it that he needs to be in person. He feels like he needs to be in person, or the team needs to be together to do their work effectively.
By the way, I'm sorry.
I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a mix. Like, no one's going to, then things will normalize to become more normal, and there'll be a mix of remote and at home working. So
yeah. Hey, by the way, OKRs, for anybody that doesn't know,
Right.
I
I was just
didn't,
gonna say the
and so
same
I
thing,
looked it
Bobby.
up, is objectives and key results, right? I
Right.
believe. Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. Well, and I think Sam kind of hit it right there, because we're asking the question, and like the way I formulated in my head, like, can you have a can you just have a culture that's completely physically separated? Where everything operates completely on Zoom. As you think of, I mean, there's very few sectors that you can actually do that. When you're talking about physical goods, it's impossible because you need to physically be there to make the goods, right? But at least, for a SaaS company or tech companies, you can probably get away with, most people working from home or doing that. So, I mean, when I was initially thinking about this question, I'm like, all right. And then thinking about passionate CEOs and charismatic CEOs that are, let's do, all that kind of stuff. And like, can that exist? But I don't know if it can, because it seems like you kind of want to have some of that physical, social interaction, social interaction, where, you hear the speech and you're just like, man, that was great. I could be making a great speech right now, and then we hang up and I might just talk to myself like, oh, Bob, you did, that was nice. Like I
Nobody wants to
wonder.
chest bump you, Bobby.
Yeah, no one wants to chest bump. Been working out, I might
Again,
not come down
it's
right
one of
now.
those things. I mean, it's just was kind of silly, but chest bumping is gone, right? Fist bumping is gone. All these immediate contact things are gone. So being an old sales guy, the one thing that was quite apparent in selling is people buy from people.
Yeah.
Okay. Regardless of what you're selling, people buy from people. If you're not sitting in the office with the same person, okay, across the table, looking in the eyes, smirking and laughing and all that stuff, is that you miss the ability of being able to create an emotional tie that basically precedes the acceptance of you as a salesperson. So again, the same thing is how does sales work? Can you sell a SaaS product over the phone? Well, some of them you can. Okay, the real cheapy shit and all that stuff, but not high tech, SaaS models.
Well, I mean,
wonderful stuff.
I think it depends on what, the macro is happening. I mean, I think right now sales, we know quite a few of these medical device companies that, where it's just accepted, and normally they're on the road 24/7, right? To go and meet with every hospital and physician and whatnot. But because it's accepted that we're in COVID, their potential buyer is like, all right, I'll set aside time to take the calls or not.
They take the calls, but they're not buying.
Are they not buying?
Not buying.
No.
Well, I shouldn't say they're not buying. Obviously sales have declined, whether or not it's 75, 25% or.
You're talking
50%.
medical devices in general, or just in
Well, and anything in general. Certainly medical devices have, and anything
Are
to
they?
anything to do with coming into the hospital to get some diagnostic work done. Okay, again, let's look at the number of hospital visits that hospital visits have declined dramatically. And I understand that. That's just a fear deal rather than, a business deal. But consumers are the same way. They're making their decisions. But, I don't think that has anything to do with culture. I think that has to do with straight fear.
I was just looking at some data about different sectors of the economy, about customer visits, location visits. And what would you expect them to be down, like in general across like everything, like retail, for instance?
At least 50%.
I mean, it's like 30-40%. Like it's not, and it's coming back like pretty well. And so you'd be surprised. Like it obviously depends on the region and what's allowed to be open and what isn't.
Right.
But I was looking at like casino and hotels.
Right.
And you would expect that to be down a huge amount. It's down like 30% year over year.
Yeah.
So
it's still big, but that's also with the pandemic.
Of course. Like you would expect people not to be traveling, right? So yeah, I mean, again, I think especially the SaaS sales. I mean, I think actually because people still want to fit. I mean, especially now where you need to be more efficient as a business or as a company or as a world, right? Like you need to use software and you need to do other things to become more efficient. So if you can add value, I think the sales process is actually maybe faster. I think the other thing is like, can it work for a remote team, or can it work, with work from home
Yeah,
environment.
sector to sector, I think it is going to change. I mean, ultimately, you can't compare them. I think, anything that requires, supermarkets, for example, aren't going to change.
Yeah.
No.
Hey,
Tell me how supermarkets are going to change in this age. But again, I don't know if supermarkets have any sort of cultural advantage.
Amazon will figure it out.
Delivery. I think that's the
Yeah.
bigger change, right? It's a shift in delivery. I know more people. And there was a time where in LA, like restaurants were delivering groceries where you can order groceries from restaurants. So I think supply chain somewhat changes. And I think that'll shift back too. I don't really our family doesn't grocery shop anymore really in the grocery store, since we lived in New York and we were getting deliveries there. And then now we're in LA and we've kind of kept up that lifestyle. So,
Well, it's New York.
Yeah.
They deliver up the back stairway. Yeah.
New York is like the most impossible place to go grocery shop. It's like the best and the most impossible.
That's why all the places have back stairways and back elevators. Really, right? Isn't that where you go to the back door and there's your food? It's kind of funny.
So hey guys, I want to play a fun game. Let's put our CEO hats on.
A fun guy?
Let's say, we're gonna have this is gonna be fun.
Hey, sorry, that just reminded me one thing before we get to the game.
Okay.
Culture wise, and you brought it up with Bill Belichick, Kevin, but I think it starts from the owner, right?
Oh, great.
And so for a public company, it starts from the board. Right?
That's a great example. I like that one. Yeah. My uncle.
So at the public company, it starts at the board level. Like if you don't have a good culture at the board who's actually measuring and looking at the right things and making the right decisions, then, and measuring the CEO on the right metrics, which Bobby, on the magazine, right? I wrote an article on proxies there, and that's a great way for public company investors to look at, to see what the board is measuring in terms of executive management, and also what the board gets measured on too, and their bonus compensation. So it starts from there, and then that trickles down, because the CEO, what their bonus is going to be based off of is what they're going to tell their employees. Hey, focus on this, right? And so if you want to focus on revenue, then you can kind of expect that's what's going to be the OKR that's measured, for instance, right? Or the measurement that's measured. But then if you focus on gross profit, or you focus on earnings or earnings per share, right? If you're focused on earnings per share, when the board goes and does a share buyback, maybe they're just trying to get the share count lowered so that they can get more earnings per that share. So again, it drives everything, and that's again culture. It's all about measuring what you measure, in my opinion.
As a board member, and we had this conversation in one of the other sessions, as a board member, I agree with you entirely, to the point where I worked with a company that I was engaged with in doing just that, roles and responsibilities of the board. And those were OKRs that trickled down, and then the CEO trickled it down, and everybody else trickled it down. So everything was set up from the top down. And it's fascinating because I think that's appropriate. And on the other hand, is that I've seen companies that trickle up, and that trickle up theory actually seems to work in some places as well. It's kind of funny, but I am with you entirely that the culture, if you want to keep this thing on culture, the culture stays. The board may be quiet, but the CEO has to basically turn it into turn whatever the board wants into some sort of funny game that Bobby wants to play, maybe.
Yeah, here we go. You ready for the game?
Back to you, Bobby.
Here we go. Here's our game. So let's say let's put all our CEO hat or board of director hats on. Let's just assume the CEO is chairman of the board as well, just to make this easy. All right. So whether COVID hits or not, or we're starting a new company, and we're like, okay, we want to have our company be completely remote. We want physical separation. Maybe we meet once a quarter, twice a year, or something like that. There's that mixed in, but for the most part, physically separated. How would you create a culture within that organization? What are some things that you would implement so that you would hope that business would succeed? That's a game here.
Friday virtual beer.
Friday virtual beer. Okay, that's a start.
Again, you have to create, in my opinion, you have to create some sort of means that people can engage. Okay. Outside of business. I think that's what it comes down to. It's kind of the thing about how do you create water cooler communications, okay, that are effective and that can get things done. That's to me, that kind of is the old school way of, the coffee room, the water cooler, the see you in the hall type of thing. Hey, I need to ask you a question. Those are the things that are missed in any sort of environment like this. So again, one has to consider am I suggesting that those things have value today? And old school would say yes, new school might sit down and say no. Okay, nobody cares anymore. So again, it might very well be brought on by what you have already established as being your culture. Your culture is going to be different. It's not going to have these personal interactions on non-business activities. Okay. Does a new company not have those? When we hang up, Bobby, we're not going to have beer, right?
I mean, I have a few in the fridge right now.
We could not hang up and have
actually, I think sadly, I think they're the same beers that maybe Sam brought over when we last had our MicroCap meetup, unfortunately. So they might be a few months old. But
so what I would do is I would think about how to gamify things. And I've seen it done at a software sales company, which is I'm not being creative and coming up with my own idea, but they would do like games every hour or games every week where they had like a big, again, they had this in their office, but you can obviously do it virtually, where you have like a leaderboard in the side of your screen, for instance, right? And you say, okay, this is the metric we're trying to hit this quarter. Is it like with our current customers, how can we get an add-on sale? For instance, who can do the most add-on sales in the next day or the next week? And then with that, you get a reward, right? And then you also get like your name, shouted out in an email. I see schools kind of doing this too with the whole school from home thing, where like students get like their students of the week, things of that sort. So I think that's what I would kind of implement and try to make it a game, because at the end of the day, like when we're talking to each other, we're not seeing each other in real life, but it's kind of like a game. It's kind of like a virtual reality type of thing.
Is that idea, Sam, is that connected to the fact that let's sit down and say that a majority of people under 40, I mean, I don't even know the number anymore, have in fact a history of game playing, of some sort of again, game playing, if you want to just call it that, control.
So if you think about the best video games, they're just the most addicting. And so there's an addicting aspect where, again, I don't know what percentage of people, but in your brain is just chemicals, right? And so when you win a game and that drive to try to win, it releases this chemical in your brain that makes you happy. Dopamine, right? So it's dope.
Dope.
You mentioned drugs earlier, right? So but yeah, I mean, that's the same thing with like these YouTube videos that are, they have these kids opening up these toys, right? It's just getting that rush. And so if you can just do that, and I think it naturally plays to human behaviors, human behavior and psychology, I think that's the right way to do it. And if you can get that done where people are actually addicted, and you hire the right people and you keep the people who keep wanting to play these games, I think that's how you can build a great culture and a great company.
The interesting thing is along the same, not on the same lines, but in another fashion. I can go back and look. Remember, I'm the Bostonian, so I follow the New England Patriots and really follow Belichick. And most recently, because of the COVID, they didn't have any practices for 2 weeks. Zero practices. Okay, and of course they get their ass handed to them by the lowly Denver Broncos. Now, Belichick would never come out and sit down and say, God damn it, no practices means, but that's the way I'm sure he's feeling. So in another fashion, practice.
He did say that though. He did an interview where he actually came out and said like, oh, here, hold on. We've been in practice.
Right, Bobby, on that. Yeah. But again, so that's the other side of it is that, and again, I'm not quite sure why I want to use sports teams for it, but it's a good analogy in one way. Here you show that the inability of being able to have personal contacts and running through everything, same again, do it again, may very well, as we have experienced, may have led to a decline in the performance capabilities of the team. So, now we're in that interesting area of when is it appropriate for personal contacts to expand the success of the operation in one case, where in another case, it's maybe unnecessary. And I agree with you, Sam. Gaming might very well be a leverageable trend that could be used to maintain a culture. And it's a culture that I'm familiar with. I've never played a game in my life, literally. Okay.
Well, you watch a lot of sports.
Well, you know what?
That's a game,
But I watch a lot of sports.
right? And you're tied to that outcome. So
Sure. And that's
I would even take Sam's idea a step further. Like if it were me and I had my CEO hat on, because with gaming stuff and creating a prize, I would, and this is probably like way too much in a utopic world of this, but if we're going to live in there, here we go. Like if you went to each employee and you said, hey, look, if you set your goals and you hit that, it's on them to create, all right, well, what do you want? Like what, within reason, of course, but what is the reward you would want that if you met all your goals, you get it, like that would be something that's pretty interesting to me.
Wouldn't that be robotic?
Is that necessarily a bad thing?
But that's what makes a good management team, right? Is to make it not robotic and to come up with different games and ideas. And I think it starts from the top down, right? Where it's like, what are the metrics we're actually trying to get and what's important? And does that change over time? Do we come up with different ideas, right? Like different customers to try to find, or I don't know, how to get leads, right? Different ways of doing it. How do we, again, that's part of a good management team, is being creative. It's not just playing the same games over and over and over again.
What's funny about this conversation is that like, and maybe it's just me, but it's like it's almost like I'm assuming that now that there is the physical separation, that there's going to be a lag in the productivity. Whereas I think there's been a number, right? Like I think there's been a number of statistics that have shown that, the going to an office on a daily basis and doing the 9 to 5, you can be just as productive at home and working, 4-hour days, 4 days a week, in some jobs, not all jobs, but in some jobs. So it's an interesting assumption that I had going through my head while we're having this conversation. Like, well, you want to have the incentives and it's interesting to gamify things, but at the same time, it's like, are people being that less productive now that they're home? I feel like I started 3 friggin' podcasts since I started working from home. Like I feel like I'm more productive than ever.
I would argue that
I'm just speaking.
I would argue that for a variety of people, you can be much more productive at home because you're actually spending 8 hours a day working rather than 4 hours a day going to shitty meetings that you never need to go to. Looking down at your computer going, shit, I could get out of here. And some morons going, nothing to do with you. Okay, that's totally unproductive. And I think that is clear. On the other hand, the number of people who are investing, day trading, and getting into accounts like Robinhood has gone dramatically up. Don't tell me that isn't a bunch of guys working at home, bunch of guys and gals working at home, sitting over here playing with their computer, sitting on the damn things and saying, oh, I just made $33 because I traded that thing. I actually think that there is and
they missed their work meeting. No, I'm just kidding.
There's another thing going on with work at home. Work at home means you can play at home too. Okay. Yeah. And again, that's unmeasurable because you're not sitting there looking at anybody doing this stuff. You're only commenting on the fact that this person did their job. Now, the reality of it might be that that person's job only required 21 hours a week anyway, just to get everything done, because there was so much bullshit that the person had to deal with in the corporate structure. I got to go to these meetings. I got to do this, yada, 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 particularly in large bureaucracies. Okay. Guarantee you that federal government productivity hasn't changed. Okay. But again, I think that there are.
I guarantee you, it's come down a lot.
Yeah,
whatever productivity there was, it's gotten a lot less.
Yeah. So I think that there are issues and again, it's I've been looking at productivity type things for a long time, and I did quite a bit of research on it and found out that 35%, generally speaking, 35% of effort that's placed into anything is the waste of time. 35%. Okay. Oh, you're talking to Sam?
So speaking of productivity, my biggest issue is I have 2 young kids. So
And you got to talk to them.
the focus, like especially having long periods of focus, just isn't there working from home for me. So
Right.
like for me, I go into the office, it's like now I could know I'm going to spend the next like 6-7 hours doing
Head
if I
down.
wanted to be head down and do
Right.
this specific thing. So
Right.
I'd say that's, I mean, I used to also have my office like a 5-minute walk from where I live, so my commute wasn't that bad. But
Your office is in Starbucks?
I mean, I'm with Sam right there. Like I just started coming back to the office too. Just
I want to tell you something about it. It's kind of a little aside, but I told Bobby this the other day. I was out fishing. I'm out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. All right. There's barely a signal. And I'm walking around with all my gear on, walking past this crowd of people. And there was this gal sitting in the back of this pickup truck with a cab over it. She's sitting there cross-legged. She's got her computer, a little computer, her iPad, sitting on a like a box. And she's in there typing away. And I looked at her, I said, "Are you working?" She says, "Yeah." I said, "You get anything done?" He says, "Yeah, I'm here all day." And I was in there saying, this was the ultimate of work from home. You don't have to even work from home. You can work from the back of your truck at the fishing, and you only stop working when the fish start rising. Okay, then you leave. So I thought that was one of the funniest damn things, because that defined for me that this remote working can be done absolutely from anywhere, as long as you are a willing participant in satisfying these OKRs. Okay, I did my job for today. I'm done. Okay, I don't need to do any more work because it's not expected of me. Okay? That was an eye opener for me. I was really fascinated by the whole thing.
Don't worry. One of these days, I'm gonna do a round table while I'm surfing, because the phones, right? You know, they're waterproof. I'm gonna bring it out to the water one time and just be like, "All right, welcome to the." Like, hold on, guys. You know, and just go. I mean, technology has taken us there, and I think
technology has taken us there. And once again, I mean, my wife and I are nomadic, have a nomadic lifestyle, and you know, for quite some time when I was driving, she was working a lot, and I was driving, and she'd be sitting in the passenger seat, literally all teched up. She'd have a wire up here, she had the phone down here, she had the computer over here in the passenger seat, plugged all in, you know, solar panel on the roof. It's unbelievable. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can be remote, and she was getting her job done, but her job was task-based. Okay, it's truly task-based job. Get your job done, get it over, get it out. Okay.
right.
Did she have any need for culture? Just about zero. Okay, again, because
it's another big question. It's another huge question. You know, like there's some companies out there where it could work like this, and the management's kind of looking around like, you know, there's just tasks, just, you know, get them done, you get paid, go, yeah, that's it. Like they don't need prizes, they don't need this. Like I know I'm one of those people where, like, if we have a whole list of things to do, and it takes our employee however many hours a week, whatever, to get it done, it's done. Right. I don't care. It's just done. You know, that means now we can move on to the next thing.
But I think that's where I think you're missing out on what actually is a good culture, right? It's a good culture, in my opinion, is how do you not just say, get your job done and then you're good? Let's go to the next level. How do we get to the next level, right? And when you have everyone in the company on this greater goal to get to the next level, that's where you find something truly special.
Therein lies the rub.
Yes.
I think that's really a kind of interesting perspective of some companies may need it and some companies may not. Some people may need it and some people may not. And again, it's one of those things where it's probably going to come out in the wash that, you know, it's necessary when it's necessary, and who cares otherwise.
Right.
I don't know. It's a very good question.
And I must say, I come from, like, I traditionally, when I got into investing, was like a very big value investor, where it was all about, you know, finding and extracting value from a company. And then when I started to launch this fund, I talked to a lot of different fund managers, And one person, I can't remember who it was, but what they said really resonated with me. He's like, I love all you value investors because you guys go and you go look at these like crappy companies that have terrible culture. Like no one's happy to be there. Everyone's like worried about getting fired because, you know, the business is having like, is struggling at this point of time, whatever it is. And that's why it's trading cheap. He's like, have you ever been to a growth company? Growth company, everyone's excited. They're happy. They can't wait to go to work. They can't wait to like sell, you know, talk to customers, things of that sort. He's like, I just love it. He's like, it's just so much more exciting and people's attitudes are so much better. And so that really resonated with me. And although I didn't like switch completely to the growth side of things, like I see that value. And now I'm like more, I'd say like value, you know, I say growth at a reasonable price type of investor. Because I mean, you just see it visiting companies and talking to executives and how much happier they are. And that resonates throughout. And it's hard to attribute, you know, a dollar amount to that, but it definitely eventually does get there and drop to the bottom line, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And I agree with both what you and Kevin said, because it's really more or less the same thing, is that it's kind of that happy medium of, you know, all right, there's going to be times where it's just get the task done, go home, call it a day. But then there's other times where like there's tasks, but it's also carries with it that like, all right, well, we have a bigger goal in mind. So you know, you want to get your employees excited about that so that, you know, they take whatever task or work that they had to do to the next level so that you get here, you know. But I think there's a happy medium, but I think we can all agree that, you know, look, our main question today that we're trying to answer, and I think we more or less got there, is, you know, can cultural moats exist in the age of physical separation? I would say more or less yes. You know, it's just a matter of execution. And I think over time we'll see what strategies worked or not. Is it gaming? Is it just being more hands off and giving more tasks and just getting it done and going from there? Is it a mixture of working from home, but also making it so that they should come into an office, you know, every once in a while, just to kind of get that social interaction? I mean, it seems like it's going to be just a mix of all of these things, and we'll find out over time what works and what doesn't.
And then I think going back to what you guys are both saying about like getting your tasks done and then you're done for the day, I think a big aspect of OKRs and measuring things is understanding like what's a good amount of tasks to get done, or how long does it typically take someone to get these tasks done, right? And measuring them against that. And I think that's why gamifying and having like a leaderboard or a scoreboard where you can compare and say, oh, well, this person is very efficient and doing a good job of this, and this person isn't. You know, maybe this person isn't the right person for the job, right? And maybe they should be doing something else. It's something they're better at. Right. Or they need better training, right? Or something of that sort. So I think that's why measuring is so important, is because that's how you really can become more efficient. So, because again, when you're a company, you're not just like doing things within your own little bubble, you're competing against other companies as well too, and everyone else that's out there. So if you can't, I mean, that's why people technically bring in consultants, right? It's because they see these other companies, they can compare your benchmarks, they can compare you to these benchmarks. And say, hey, are you actually doing a good job? Are your gross profits and your margins, you know, equivalent to the others in the industry? You know, and then what are you doing differently? So again, that's a theoretical value, and in reality, I'm not sure if that how often that plays out, but that's what you should be doing as a company, in my opinion, to get the culture, whether in person or work from home.
Yeah, it's interesting because the question is still open: is can you measure culture? And all you said, and I agree with you entirely, is that you use the words, you can see it and you can feel it, okay? But no one's measuring it, but you can see it and you can feel it. You sit down and say, wow, this place has a vibe. This place is cool. And as Bobby said, I want to work here because everybody's happy. You know, no one's pissing and moaning, you know, and things of that type. And I think it's kind of measurable from an anecdotal perspective. You know, as you said, you know, you walk in, you can see it, you can feel it. And that's where I believe, you know, so how do you place a value on it and things of that type? And it's really quite funny to me because productivity, you can do the exact same work, okay, and do it in less time and end up being a lot more productive, okay? But it's just a fake improvement, because if I'm more productive, then if I'm a manager, I'm going to cram more work down on you, because.
Well, that's the thing. Is it more productive if you're, let's say you used to spend 20 hours a week doing something, and now you're spending an hour a week and spending the rest of the time at the beach.
Right.
Like, you're not really being more productive to in
That's what I'm
terms of
saying.
output, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
If I paid you for 20 and now you're doing one, geez, I'm going to cram more 20s down on you. So again, there is some.
But that's where I think like an ownership mentality in terms of culture. Again, I don't know. It's harder. It's easier said than done. Matters, right? Because if you're now able to do 20 times more work, right, and be as productive, you're producing more for the company. The output for the company should be more. Like a good executive or good management team should compensate that employee more, or realize that employee is compensated, and give some of that value back to the employee and not keep all of it for the company or the shareholders, right? And so I think that's where incentives matter, right? And an ownership type mentality / incentives really do matter.
Yeah, but the incentive actually is that I can actually do 20 hours of work. I can do it in 1 hour. I go to the beach.
Yeah,
that's the incentive. I'm not taking the company, I'm not, what's the right word? I'm not taking ownership of, not ownership. I forget the word I'm looking for, but I'm not screwing the company. I'm just basically doing what they tell me to do. But if I was the company and I know that the guy's doing, 1 hour work and 19 hours at the beach, maybe I can do them 3 hours of work and 17 hours at the beach and still end up with a big, huge incentive of being able to, even to the point where I can work from the beach.
Yeah.
I mean, again, there are some huge benefits to this whole thing.
So I think the incentive in that situation is I want to be at the beach, right? But I think a better company culture and a better management would be able to be like, okay, how do we incentivize you differently so that you spend those 19 hours helping the business do better instead of being at the beach, right?
Yeah.
Or hey, if you want to be at the beach, that's fine. But I don't know, figure out a better structure where, there's something, we'll go work at the beach, maybe do other
management
things.
has been doing that forever, how to figure out to maximize gain.
So going back to, I think what I would do as a CEO is I've started to see more and more like software or like HR, like analysis of finding the right like type of personality for specific roles in companies. And I think that's part of, I think what you just said, Kevin, triggered me in terms of, finding that person who, if they're able to do something that they were doing in 20 hours in 1 hour, finding the right person whose mentality is, hey, let me drive to do more and get more out of my 20 hours, right? That I'm going to spend actually working and focusing on work. So I think that's another aspect where as an executive, I would focus on what tools can I find where I can, hire the right people to do what I need done.
Yep.
By the way, not to go down another rabbit hole, but I was thinking while you guys were talking there, it'd be interesting to see some case studies of even pre-COVID of globalized companies. I mean, having virtual, physically separate environments has been around now for, forever, but especially from a software and technology perspective, for many, many years now. So, I know this is gonna be bad. I'm sure we did some case studies when I was getting my MBA, and maybe I'm just forgetting them. But I know there are plenty of case studies out there. So it'd be interesting to go through and see, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and going from there. But I think, guys, I think we're there. Any final thoughts on the topic or anything that you want the rest of the audience to know about, or you could just give us your social media handle and where people can go find more information. So
I was going to make one comment just to suggest that.
Sure.
The topic was this long-winded idea, but I was going to give you the short one, which is basically moats, magic, and management. Okay. And to see how the whole, there you go. That might even be what we talked about. There's a lot of magic in this stuff.
There is. I couldn't agree more. That was a good way to end it. That felt good. Kevin. I don't know what that was. That felt good. But Sam.
Follow me on Twitter. I have I don't know. One of my friends said first to 1,000. I don't know why he just brought it up on Twitter. Andy.
Like it.
Yeah. So help me get to 1,000 followers. Namiri at Twitter, at Namiri on Twitter. Sorry. And then the other thing is, I just say, I think going back to our initial conversation about moats, I think like, for instance, a WD-40, we'll go back to that example. If there's a microcap company out there that's starting to encroach on their market or comes out with a better, a better lubricant than WD-40, for instance, WD-40 will probably just let them, gain some market share, gain some market share, gain some market share, and then buy them. And I think that's why, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm attracted to microcaps, is because that's a great catalyst to extract value. And once you're big, like, there's you don't have that option. Like, who's going to buy Tesla right now at its size, at its valuation? So again, I don't know if you agree with that, Kevin, or not, but obviously you do. You said they'll buy them, but I think that's why there's a lot of value in looking and hunting for microcaps, is because when you find one of those moat breakers, for instance, you found something special. It happens in the software industry all the time. I mean, look at Monster now, for instance. I mean, that never got bought, but Coke and Pepsi, if you start encroaching on their market share, they buy you. So anyway, I mean, that's kind of my final thoughts.
Yeah, Celestial Holdings. They're going to be bought anytime soon.
You're saying Celsius.
Celsius.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Celsius.
Yes.
Yeah, that's been a hot FinTwip topic the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's been pretty interesting. Full disclosure, not a shareholder.
Not a
Anyways, all right, I'm gonna plug Kevin. You can go follow him at The Good Prick on Twitter. That's at The Good Prick. That's a CK, not just K, is CK. And we're trying to get him to 500 followers. I'm sad. Maybe we'll throw you in the same challenge. If we get you to 1,000, we get Kevin to 500. The challenge is that then you got to do like a TikTok dance. Or something.
I'm not doing the TikTok dance that
you're doing
was talking about. I looked at that WAP thing. I think that's
WAP. Oh wow, Kevin.
I looked at Cardi. What's the name with Cardi B?
Yep. Yeah, we're getting. You're gonna do it, dude.
Sings this song called WAP.
You're gonna do it.
That is disgusting. that woman must be one. I have no idea who the hell she is, but my God, did she ever sing disgusting songs?
Well,
I'm not going to do a damn thing if it has anything to do with that. And by the way, I don't know how many do I have today? I don't even check.
Hey, let's see. You're at right now.
See if Kyle's doing his job.
Yeah, let's see. Keel.
Sorry, Steven.
You're at 386.
Get out! It's working.
It's working. Yeah, you were at, I think, 200 at the start of this. So, our powers combined.
I have to start writing stuff.
You did the other day. I like this one.
Did.
New name for masks: face diapers. That was good.
Diapers. Yeah,
I like that. That was good. That was quality. That's a quality tweet.
That's something out of something a good prick would tell you.
That's right. Exactly.
Face diapers.
And I think also a good prick would say that Cardi B music is disgusting.
It is. Did you read the lyrics of this thing?
No, that's the point.
Read the lyrics on. No, she can't say that. I'm sorry. I'm too damn old to listen to that trash.
Have you heard the song on the radio before?
I don't know. I have to read the lyrics.
I think like half of it must be just like blacked out.
Yeah, you gotta kind of like beep 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 beep. The whole song's gonna be full of beep beeps.
All right, we're leaving it there. You can follow me on Twitter at Bobby K Craft. That's BOBBYKKRAFT. This has been the Investors Roundtable, and thanks, guys. This was fun today.
Fun, Bobby.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Bobby. Appreciate it.
You guys.